Coming up this week, but I am with you always. Hello everyone, and welcome to our Sunday Spoilers. This is a chance that we have each week to prepare ourselves for worship. God is an amazing God. God has so many things for us to see, so many things for us to learn. Worship is something that we do to be connected to God. And the more prepared we are going into that time of worship, the more able we are to receive what God has to say to us, what God has to show to us. We are continuing our Lenten series this year, looking at the greatest buts of the Bible, where God says things that change our perspective. We have a certain perspective of things, we have a certain understanding of how things work or are supposed to work, but God shows us something different. God shows us a different path, God shows us a different understanding of what that is. We've looked at forgiveness, we've looked at fear, and this week we're going to look at loneliness. Loneliness is something that's a real thing. Loneliness is something that many of us deal with on a daily basis. We know that if you're a person who struggles with loneliness, it can be a dark time. It can be a time where you feel like no one cares. It can be a time where you feel like you're just lacking of just connection to other people. And the thing about loneliness is it's hard to really understand, it's hard to really define loneliness because it's different for each person. Loneliness is a very individual thing. Different people thrive on different levels of human contact and human connection. I think the thing to remember about loneliness is it's different than being alone. Sometimes being alone is good. Sometimes having alone time is good. We talk a lot about that when it comes to spiritual devotion and having devotional time and praying and meditating. Those times happen better when we're alone, when we have a chance to think about things. And it's not that being alone necessarily is loneliness. Loneliness is more of a craving, a yearning for that kind of connection with other people. Some psychologists say that loneliness is really a response. It's a response to things that happen to us in life and how people treat us in life. And we're going to be using as a text to kind of get ourselves around this idea of being alone and loneliness, the Great Commission. And this is a text we use a lot. We use it for a lot of different circumstances. But there's a phrase in here that I think really helps us to understand this idea of loneliness or even being alone. So here now from Matthew in the Great Commission. Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age." Now, typically, when we hear this verse, we're talking about this resurrection appearance of Jesus. This great commission where Jesus is sending the disciples out to establish what we now know as the church, to establish this idea of community in the world, this idea of following Jesus in the world. We focus on that part of the commission part, to go and make disciples, and what that means. That's our charge. That's the mission that God has given to us. Part that we don't always talk as much about is what comes after that. That I am with you always, even to the end of the age. In the midst of chaos, in the midst of feeling like you're just out there by yourself, and in this case, where the disciples don't have this humongous task in front of them of going out into the world and making disciples. They know right from the get-go, we know right from the get-go, that we're not alone in that God's presence is with us, that God's presence lifts us up, that God's presence is something that empowers us. I think that's something that we can always try to remember. No matter how alone we feel, no matter how lonely we feel, no matter how much we yearn to have connection, we know that we have a connection to God. He was always there to pour himself into our lives. He's always there to pour himself into who we are. And that no matter where we are, no matter what we do, no matter what we face, we have a God who is there to listen to us. We have a God who's there to bless us. And we have a God who is there with his presence each and every day. So between now and worship time, let this be something to reflect on. How is God's presence made known in your life? How does that presence lift you up? How does that presence make you feel? How does that presence help you to see the world in a different way? How does that presence give you a power to live life in this world? Look forward greatly to seeing you in worship. Greatly look forward to talking more about this, and greatly look forward to being the community that God has made us to be. Take care, everyone. Have a blessed week.